Hey there everybody, I'm Joshua Orro the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Well everyone, the 4th of July weekend is once again here. So, what film do I have in mind this time? Well, why don't we take a look at our classic Don Bluth films, shall we? Now, as we all know, Don Bluth used to be an animator for Walt Disney Pictures, but then when the early 80s kicked in, he made his own animation studio and made classics that were family-friendly, but were also heartwarming, memorable, and traumatizing. Now, you guys may have already heard my thoughts on The Land Before Time last September, but for this Independence Day blog, I'd like to discuss my second favorite Don Bluth classic. Released on November 21st, 1986, the movie is An American Tail. Now, let's begin, shall we? A young mouse named Mousekewitz and his family immigrate from Russia to the U.S. by boat after their home is destroyed by cats. During the trip, a fierce storm throws Fievel from the ship and he loses contact with his family. Luckily, he managed to sail to New York in a bottle. There, Irish mouse Bridget, an Italian mouse named Tony, and a kindly cat named Tiger help Fievel search for his loved ones. So, how does this film hold up to me? Well, it's really a touching movie. Some parts were scary, some parts were a bit funny, some parts were serious, and some parts, even at the end, was real tear-jerking. But, in order to explain more information, let's move on to Mustang Notes and I'll tell you. Now, production began in December 1984 as a collaboration between Steven Spielberg, Don Bluth, and Universal Studios, based on a concept by David Kirshner. Spielberg has asked Bluth to make something pretty like he did in Secret of NIMH. Make it beautiful, he says. In a 1985 interview, Spielberg described his role in the productions as first in the area of story, inventing incidents from the script, and now consists of looking every 3 weeks to a month at the storyboards that Don Bluth sends him, making his comments. Bluth later commented that Spielberg has not dominated the creative growth of Tale at all. There is an equal share of both of us in the picture. Nevertheless, this was Steven Spielberg's first animated feature, and it took some time for him to learn that adding a 2-minute scene would take dozens of people months of work. In 1985, he stated at this point he was enlightened, but he still thought he couldn't believe it's so complicated. Now, originally the concept consisted of an all-animal world like Disney's Robin Hood, but Bluth suggested featuring an animal world existing as a hidden society from the human world, like The Rescuers. After viewing The Rescuers, Spielberg agreed. Emmy Award-winning writers Judy Feudberg and Tony Guise were brought in to expand the script. When the initial script was complete, it was extremely long and was heavily edited before its final release. Bluth felt uncomfortable with the main character's name, thinking Fievel was too foreign-sounding, but he felt audiences wouldn't remember it. Spielberg disagreed. The character was named after his maternal grandfather, Philip Posner, whose Yiddish name was Fievel. The scene in which he presses up against a window to look into a classroom filled with American school mice is based on a story Spielberg remembered from his grandfather, who told him that Jews were only able to listen to school lessons through open windows while sitting outside in the snow. Spielberg eventually won out, though something of a compromise was reached by having Tony refer to Fievel as Philly. Spielberg also had some material cut that he felt was too intense for children, including a scene Bluth was developing revolving around wave monsters while the family was at sea. In designing the look of the of the film and its characters, Bluth worked with Amblin Entertainment and the Sears marketing department. He decided to make a stylistic shift from the more angular modern style of animation of the time to a style similar to Disney animation from the 40s, where the characters have a more soft and cuddly feel. This proved successful, and at release, many critics praised the old-fashioned style of the film's look and feel. This was during a period when the market for nostalgia was particularly strong among baby boomers, who at this time were seeking products for their young children, and only 3-year-olds before the beginning of the Disney Renaissance for the studio Bluth once worked for. Bluth referred to the storyboard and entire picture, but it soon proved to be an enormous task. Larry Lecker was brought in to assist, turning Bluth's rough sketches into final storyboard panels. Bluth commented that he would then send them over to Spielberg. Often I brought them over myself that I could explain them, he says. Steven would get very excited, but when he saw we'd edit the boards right there, adding more drawings or trimming them back. A large crew of animators were pulled together from around the world, utilizing cell painters in Ireland. Discussions arose about moving the entire production to Ireland, but Spielberg balked at the idea of a story called An American Tale being produced overseas. At this time, Bluth and his crew discovered that using a video printer greatly increased their productivity. They could use videotape in action, and then print out small black and white thermal images from the tape for references for both human and animal characters. A shorthand method similar to the rotoscoping technique, called in fact xerographing, using since the earliest days of animation, in which sequences are shot in live action and traced into animation cells. They also utilize the process of building models and photographing them, particularly the ship at sea and the giant mouse of Misks, a technique also used in many Disney films. During production, Amblin Entertainment and Universal Studios expected to view the dailies and approve all major work on the film, and various outside parties also requested changes here and there. This caused the production to buckle from excessive oversight, and made Bluth feel like he was losing freedom of control over the production process. As the release deadline approached, pressure grew throughout the crew and numerous problems arose, ranging from slower than expected cell painting in Ireland to low footage output by some animators. Also, the songwriters had written the score much later than originally desired. Suddenly, scenes had to be dropped to save time and money, and new, shorter scenes had to be created to help pick up the story plots lost in the process, sometimes making the film's storyline look jumbled. Notable cuts including the Mousekewitz family journey across Europe. Also, a scene in which the Mousekewitzes first meet Tiger, and he also gets stuck in a tree, and also an upbeat song that Fievel was planning to sing while imprisoned in the sweatshop, and a scene which gave greater explanation to the changing of names at Ellis Island. Cuts are also responsible for the baby Yasha's apparent disappearance after the boat trip. The film was also plagued by union difficulties. Bluth had agreed to accept $6.5 million to get the film produced, which later grew to $9 million, at a time when Disney was spending around $12 million per film. He knew it would be difficult, but felt it was worth the sacrifice to work with Spielberg on a major project like this. With the agreement of his employees, salaries were frozen for a year and a half. Unlike the former Bluth Studios, the new Sullivan Bluth Studios were non-union, and when many workers attempted to withdraw from the union, it sparked a battle between Bluth and the union, which continued through most of the production. It was mostly the struggle that later compelled Bluth to relocate to Ireland, which he felt offended a more supportive atmosphere. Now, I should say the animation is classic for a Don Bluth animated film. Plus, I also like that there's an added plot in this film. While Fido is looking for his family, other mice are looking for ways to rebel against the cats who are killing everybody. I also like how they use the freedom of speech idea, which was pretty common for around the 1800s. And also, there are a few mafia references as well. I also need to note that other than the cats in Russia and a few in the New York streets, there are also other scary things in the film. Like, for example, the monstrous waves that throw Fievel overboard from the boat. There are also creepy bugs in a sewer. Also, the crafted giant mouse of Misk looks pretty scary, but pretty cool. And I think it's pretty similar to the crafted bird from A Bug's Life. But there's one little flaw I have to point out in this film. In a few scenes while Fievel is looking for his family, they appear to be right nearby him, and none of them seems to notice each other. Now, let's talk about the songs and music. Now, the score for the film was composed by James Horner, who sadly died in a plane crash last month. The music was recorded in England and performed by the London Symphony Orchestra and the choir of King's College. Two excerpts of period music also appeared in the film, like John Philip Sousa's March Stars and Stripes Forever, and Poor Wandering One from the 1880 comic opera The Pirates of Penzance by Gilbert and Sullivan. There's also a musical reference to the 1947 song Galway Bay, popularized by Bing Crosby. Initially, Bluth and his team were disappointed with the first score recording, but once edited, they found the music worked quite well. Ironically, the final score became one of the film's strongest points. Now, the first song that's sung by the characters in the film is called There Are No Cats in America, which is sung by Papa Mousekewitz, along with an Italian mouse and an Irish mouse. Now, the way this song is sung is how each mouse had a horrifying experience with cats, while singing about how they won't have to worry about cats while they're in America. And, well, the next song is Never Say Never, which is sung by Henri, a pigeon of a French descent, voiced by Christopher Plummer, whom folks might know as Captain Von Trapp from The Sound of Music with Julie Andrews. And after this film, he played the villain in Rock-a-Doodle, which is a guilty pleasure of mine. Now, to describe the song, it's kind of the kind of song that tells you to stay confident and never giving up. Now, after the first round of songs was written, it was decided that a special song would be written for Linda Rose Dunn to sing over the end credits with James Ingram. The song, called Somewhere Out There, was composed by Horner and written by Barry Mann, which won a Grammy Award and became one of the most popular songs from an animated feature since the 1950s. Now, while I do like the version sung by Fievel and Tanya, I love the end credits version much better. Plus, I'll never forget the time when I got to sing this song with my choir classmates back in 2001. And the song that follows that is called A Duo, sung by a vegetarian tabby cat named Tiger, voiced by the late, great Dom DeLuise, whom folks might know from two other Don Bluth films during the 1980s, and he was also in Disney's Oliver and Company, and in the 90s, I think, was also the voice of Christopher Columbus in The Magic Voyage, which is another guilty pleasure of mine. Now, I like to think of this song as like a friendship song. That's basically all I have to say about this one. Now, let's move on to the characters of this movie. Our main character, Fievel Mousekewitz, is voiced by Philip Glasser, whom after this film, not only was he in 2 other Don Bluth films, but he was also a little boy named Peter in PJ Sparkles with Jodie Benson. Now, while Fievel is the generally accepted spelling of his name, the opening credits spell it as Fievel, the more common transliteration of the Yiddish name. However, many English-speaking writers have come to adopt the spelling Fievel, especially for this character. It was this spelling that was used for the film's poster, in promotional materials, and tie-in merchandise. And in the title of the sequel, American Table Fievel Goes West, his last name is a play-on of the Jewish-Russian last name Mousekewitz, the name of the human occupants of the house his family is living under in the beginning of the film. Now, I see Fievel as a bright and brave young mouse, but he has done some stupid things throughout this film, and one of those stupid things ended up throwing him overboard in the first place. But he, on the other hand, he was smart enough to plan, to fight off the cats with the giant mouse of mist idea. Next we come to Fievel's older sister, Tanya Mousekewitz, voiced by Amy Green. She's an optimistic, cheerful, and obedient young mouse. She continued to believe that her brother was alive after he was washed off the ship en route to America. She was given an American name, Tilly, as an immigration point at Castle Garden. Next up is Papa Mousekewitz, voiced by Nehemiah Persoff, or however it's pronounced. Anyway, he's the head of the Mousekewitz family who plays the violin and tells stories to his children, like the one about the giant mouse of mist, for example. And he's also been saying how America never had cats, which in reality there are. And he's the one who also gave Fievel his hat as a Hanukkah present. Now, I already talked about Henri and Tiger, so let's move on to Tony Taponi, voiced by Nate Whitman's mother, Pat Music. He's a streetwise young mouse of an Italian descent, and with a tough New Yorker attitude. The name Taponi is a play-on word of topo, the Italian word for mouse. Now, next to Tiger, Tony is my favorite character in the film because of his tough attitude. It's almost like as if he can make for a New Yorker Dodger. Sort of. Next up is Bridget, voiced by Catherine Bloor. She's an attractive mouse activist of Ireland descent, that is. And she's also Tony's girlfriend. I love this character too. She's kind, passionate, yet soft-spoken. Bridget acts as a kind mother figure to Fievel as well. I also need to add that she came to America for the freedom of speech. Next we come to Honest John, voiced by Neil Ross. Now, before I continue, don't let this character confuse you for Honest John Worthington Foulfellow from Pinocchio. Now, John is a local Irish-born mouse politician who knows every voting mouse in New York City. He's also an ambulance-chasing drunkard who takes advantage of voters' concern to increase his political prestige. He is a stereotype of the 19th century Tammany Hall politicians. The next character I want to talk about is Gustine Alzheimer, voiced by Madeline Kahn, who was in, well, 2 Mel Brooks films that I know about, and had a cameo with Dom DeLuise in the Muppet movie. She's a German-born mouse, considered to be the richest and most powerful mouse in New York City. She rallies the mice into fighting back against the cats. Now, the funniest thing I find about her is the way her speech is. Like, sometimes, like, the way she pronounces the word has sometimes, like, a W sound in it, like when she pronounces rally as wowie, or feline as feline. Next we come to the villain, Warren T. Rat, voiced by John P. Finnegan. Now, in reality, he's actually a cat disguised as a rat with fake ears and a fake nose. And he's also the leader of the Mott Street Maulers, a gang of street cats who terrorize the mice of New York. And it makes me wonder why he hired Tiger on his troupe. Anyway, Warren plays out like a mafia who has, sometimes has mice pay for their protection, and sometimes talks in Shakespeare speeches. He is also accompanied nearly all the time by his accountant, Digit, who is voiced by Will Ryan, whom after this film voiced Petrie in The Land Before Time. Now, about Digit, he's a small British-accented cockroach who has a fondness for counting money, and is plagued with a frequent electrical charges in his antennas whenever he gets nervous or excited. And now it's time to move on to my final words of this film. Above all, An American Tail is truly a Don Bluth classic. The animation is dark and outstanding, the voice acting is phenomenal, the songs are all memorable, and in my eyes, you and your children will even shed a tear during this film. I give this film a 98% out of 100. Well, that's it for today's blog, folks. But you may be asking, will I blog Bible Goes West? Maybe someday. But, anyway, be sure to tune in next time. Mustang Power, and Happy Independence Day, folks.